John comes out.
Yeah.
I said, hey, you're going to stand there all night or you're going to come in?
Wow.
So we walk in.
Was it a private club?
They owned the building. They owned the
uh-huh.
building. We walk in, 40-foot mahogany bar.
Jeez.
4-inch velvet carpeting throughout the place.
Yeah.
Gorgeous women throughout the place, all right? And I'm seeing these guys walk in with their overcoats on, the white scarf, and the hats.
Wow.
Opening up their jackets.
And what year is this? What year were you saying?
This has to be 70s.
Wow. Okay, go ahead.
They go into their pocket, they take out their gun, and they check it.
They take out their gun and check it.
Right, they get it checked for
This sounds like Dodge City.
It was true.
I love it.
All right?
Oh, my goodness.
And then their gumadas, as they say, or their girlfriends, will keep it non-ethnic.
Yeah.
Their girlfriends.
This sounds like something out of the Goodfellas.
You know,
the movie.
people would not... I had a very interesting life.
Yeah.
Okay? Their girlfriends would come in and they would check their guns. They'd be frisked by another woman.
Wow.
All right? They check it. Now, I saw these guys go over to a table and peel out $100 bills.
Oh, mercy.
And then I would see underlings come over and peel out $50 bills. And then...
Jeez. That's incredible.
More underlings coming out and peel out $20 bills. So I went over to, and I got to keep correcting the name. I went over to John, and I said, look, John, I don't ask questions. That's why I'm with you a couple of years.
Yeah.
But I have to know, what kind of a gig is this?
They're checking their guns for the ladies and the gentlemen. Go ahead.
What do we play?
Yeah. It's not the PBA.
I know.
It's not the PBA.
So he says, okay, take a look at what's going on. That's when I saw all these peeling of dollar bills.
Hundreds and
thousands.
C-notes, mercy.
Yeah. He says, you notice the big guys were pulling out the big bucks. I said, yes, I noticed that. He says, that's their station within the organization. The ones that were peeling out the lower one was at a lower station.
Wow.
Et cetera, et cetera.
Wow.
Okay?
Wow.
I said, so again, what are we playing for? He says, one of the boys, the big boys, was killed. All his insurance went to his wife.
Yeah.
This is for his, I won't say gumara. This is for his girlfriend, all right? To get her through. And she must have collected thousands of dollars.
Wow.
So it really a whole different scenario.
Yeah. It sounds like something out of my favorite movie, Goodfellas. It really, really does. That's that whole area of New York as well, right?
Yeah.
From You've seen Goodfellas, right?
Yes.
Hey, we're speaking with a good guy here, good fella. Bobby King, co-host on your Radio Factory for this Wednesday, July 21st. Bobby King, an icon of rock and roll with the Buckinghams, worked with Dion and the Belmonts and some of the great groups we all grew up with. We're getting the story behind the stories we often like to do here on your Radio Factory about a great era of American music, a doo-wop era. Do you have a favorite group? You mentioned Elvis was like your favorite voice. Do you have a favorite group beside the ones that you were a part of?
Believe it or not, I like the...
Go ahead, name any group.
I'm trying to recall which is my favorite group. I like the Five Satins.
Yeah, Freddie Paris and the Five. I have to
know?
name drop a little bit. The Port Jeff Ferry that I do some advertising work for.
Okay.
Years ago, they used to do rock and roll cruises, moonlight cruises to nowhere. And for a number of years, we had Freddie Paris and the Five Satins on. And I had a chance to really sit down and talk when they were taking a break. He lives right across the Sound in Hamden, Connecticut, which is just on the other side of New Haven. One of the nicest guys I met in rock and roll. Very similar to you.
Yeah.
Just a nice, God-fearing guy. Give you the shirt off his back.
Nice.
And it was, I mean, you know, in the still of the night, it's sort of like a national make-out song or something. I mean, you remember those days when we used to fog up windshields.
Yes.
But, you know, a great guy. So, I mean, similarly, what group did you really like?
I still like the Beach Boys, believe it or not.
Yeah,
it's
the
a
Beach
clean,
Boys are pretty
It's a
good.
clean sound. It's a California sound. It's
Yeah.
different.
Yeah.
You know? And
the Five Satins, you like Freddie Paris and the Five Satins. How about the girl groups? Any girl group come quickly to mind? There were so many of those, too. Phil Spector had, you know, he engineered so many great groups.
He was a nice man.
And now he's in a pokey.
I know, but he was a nice man.
Well, but I hear he was like, he was kind of tough in the recording studios like Brian Wilson, who the Beach Boys was.
Yeah, but he was always...
He had a sound, that wall of sound.
Yeah, yeah.
I heard an interesting story. I don't know if you ever heard this one. I don't know if it's true or not. I even forget where I heard it. It could have been on the old WCBS FM when they did their oldie show.
Right.
that Phil Spector, famous record producer for the Ronettes, in the early 60s, when he would secure studio time, whatever record company, as most people in this industry, and I know myself, when I write a commercial, if I can change that commercial, even while I'm still producing it,
right.
I'm never satisfied with my work.
Of course.
Really. I always want to add something different to it. Likewise, Phil Spector, when he was preparing for a recording session, he really didn't know if he wanted guitars, clarinets, strings, saxophones, how many drummers he wanted, and all the rest of the stuff. So he overbooked. And the record companies say, Phil, what are you doing? You've got 50 musicians in the studio here. They're on the clock. We have to pay them. So Phil inadvertently decided to use them all. And thereby, just by accident, created his signature thing, the wall of sound.
Yeah. Well, that's what we're getting back to what you said.
I love when things like that happen. I'm sure it happened to you in recording studios, too, where you improvise, you invent. I mean, you guys invented a whole new music form.
Well, getting back to that, on our first recording, okay, I had a drummer by the name of Paulie DeSimone. I think he's still playing professionally. And we go into the studio, and he could read like a banshee. I'll clean that up also. And we're playing, and there's a half a beat off. And the producer comes running out. He says, "You're a half a beat off." He says, "I'm not. You're a half a beat off." He kept going after this.
Yeah.
And Paulie says, "I could read music."
Uh-huh.
And for a drummer to read like that, in those days, nobody read like that.
Yeah.
So they're arguing back and forth, and the producer finally goes over to his music and looks at it and dusts it off. There was a fly spot by one note.
Gee.
A true story.
Wow.
You know?
Wow.
So, but like you say, back in those days, you went in and you cut. And that was it. You had maybe 1 or 2 cutting sessions.
And that was it.
That was it. Hey, out next.
That must have been very nerve-wracking because, when you want to record, you want to make some money on this stuff. And, you have 1 or 2 tries. We got to get it right.
You're on the clock. We're paying for studio time.
Incredible.
Get in and get out.
And most of the songs you were part of were always recorded in New York City. These were the days where almost everything happened in New York City. It wasn't recorded out on the West Coast or anywhere.
No.
Everything was New York City, not England, to be sure.
I was 13 years old when I first started recording.
You're kidding me. So, when did you start playing the saxophone? When did you take up music? What age were you?
Oh, I was about 11. But I started recording at 13. I had my own band at 15.
Wow.
And
wow.
I remember going to the Brill Building, 1650 Broadway.
Uh-huh. That building's still there, the Brill Building.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Yes, it is. And with records that I wrote and recorded on my own.
Wow.
And trying to get them published. And I had one record. At that time, it was called God Only Knows. I wrote it, everything else.
Sounds like the Beach Boys.
It wasn't that one.
It was your own version of it.
But they said you have to change the title because you can't mention God in a record.
Wow.
Can you believe that? And now you want to listen to
unless
the
it was a gospel or something like that. Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, I started in radio in 1963.
Okay.
And you couldn't say the word pregnant.
Exactly.
There were certain words. It's a whole different world today.
You listen to rap music, and I say, "What is this? I don't understand it. How do I get away with it?"
I don't know if it's just because I'm old, but I just don't get rap.
And it's not.
And there's some great music out there today. For my money, I like this Lady Antebellum.
Okay.
I'm sure Nicholas knows her, right?
Or
knows the group. I mean, there's some very good groups that are out there today, but the rap, I just don't get. Maybe it's an inner city urban thing.
What group would you like, Nick? What? None?
Lady Antebellum?
I like them. I listen to a lot of punk stuff.
Which is still rock and roll. Yeah. Punk is still considered rock and roll.
Sure.
I mean, you wouldn't hear it on this radio station, but and I think every generation has their own special music anyway. Yeah. I'm not going to say the big band era was any less because of rock and roll. You can't judge one against the other. It's the music that you grew up with that's that makes the difference. But something about the new generation. I don't want to put Nick on the spot, your grandson in the studio, but I have 4 daughters. Ages from the 30s down to the 20s, and several of them love classic 50s and 60s rock and roll.
Yes.
They love the Skyliners. They love the Shirelles. Johnny Maestro and the Brooklyn Bridge, another big Long Island group. So, the rock and roll has crossed a lot of age boundaries, the way Frank Sinatra has.
Sure.
I mean, I can remember 1966 as a kid in Pittsburgh, liking the Beatles, the Beach Boys, the Four Seasons, certainly the Buckingham, certainly Dion and the Belmont. But when Frank Sinatra came out with Summer Wind and Strangers in the Night, I loved it.